Good morning. I'm Sana, and you're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. Every Monday morning, I'm joined by experts from across the country who are investigating our most pressing social issues and common curiosities. Over the next hour, you'll learn about their inspirations, motivations, and of course, what they know about the world around us. So grab that cup of coffee and get ready for a fun and insightful conversation. Now, one thing that Memphis is known for is its Memphis in May International Festival. But what you may not know is how this festival came to be. The story is more than just music, barbecue, and fun, but it speaks to the history of the city and also downtown Memphis. To talk more about that, this morning I'm joined by Lyman Aldrich, the Chairman Emeritus of the Memphis in May International Festival. Mr. Aldrich is Executive Vice President of International Advisory Services at Cushman & Wakefield, where his focus is to develop business opportunities with international companies in the Mid-South region. In 2012, Mr. Aldrich was inducted into the Beale Street Walk of Fame and was awarded a brass note on Beale Street. In November of 2015, the Memphis City Council honored Mr. Aldrich by naming Wagner Street in downtown at Beale Street, Lyman Aldrich Lane. Welcome, Mr. Lyman Aldrich. I'm so excited to have you here with us this morning.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I was so excited and I have to say thank you to my colleague Kurt for putting us in contact with one another because first of all, who doesn't love Memphis in May? And second of all, to be able to talk to you about the history and really how you kind of created and led a group of really innovative and inspiring young people to create what is now known around the world. So it was such an honor to have you.
Well, it's really a pleasure to talk about it, to think about what we all did to come together in the city that was just in terrible shape after Dr. King's assassination. Mm-hmm. So I can start with right after the King assassination is what I like to do to tell you about where we were at that period of time. Is that where you'd like me to start?
Yes, that would be perfect. If you could kind of set the scene for us, what Memphis was like and kind of how this group of folks came together.
Well, Memphis was in such bad shape after the King assassination. Mm-hmm. A gentleman came in from Atlanta, followed him around the country, and then decided to take his life in our city. Mm-hmm. Now, it wasn't Atlanta that had paid all the price for it. It was Memphis that has paid the price all these years. So what happened in downtown was a vacating of most of the streets in downtown. Mm-hmm. It was a city that Time Magazine called a decaying backwater river town. Mm-hmm. Isn't that great to have your city known as a decaying? It was just dismal. Tourism, what's that? There wasn't any tourism after that happened, and lousy reputation. The Peabody went broke, sold on the courthouse steps. Did you know that?
I knew that, yeah.
Went broke for several years. The Orpheum Theater was running X-rated movies.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yes, I have pictures of the marquee, Suna.
Wow.
And as you know, Beale Street closed.
Right. Yeah.
It was only one store open, and that was A. Schwab's. Everything else closed. And then it just was vacant land all the way around. What we know as Beale Street now, there were only 3 blocks from 2nd down to 4th, and those were the only blocks that there were. And then all the things that you see around there, the FedEx Forum and so forth, were built, of course, way after that.
Right. Way after.
After.
For folks listening, that's a big difference than how we think about downtown now, with all the new developments downtown and how populated it is. I love that you're setting this picture for us of a place that was, as you said, vacant. It was desolate. No one was, no one wanted to be down there. And it was really not what we think about downtown today at all.
Well, one of our historians, his name was Jimmy Ogle. He left Memphis a couple of years ago, and he said, Lyman, when you all started Memphis in May, there were more people living in the jail than the rest of downtown.
Oh.
Now we have 30,000 people living downtown, and there've been about $20 billion of investment down here since 1977. All those things took place. And so we were just bereft of anything positive downtown, except maybe for the Rendezvous. It was the only restaurant that was open at night. And it's just a wonderful place, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
So, and of course, all of it did happen, with the assassination of Dr. King. But let me set up a little bit before that, if you don't mind. A few years, it was after King, but before the renovation started back. It kind of gives you how I got to know some people that I brought in to the first diverse board in Memphis.
Yes.
And it goes back to an organization called, I think it was Memphis NFL. A gentleman by the name of Ned Cook wanted an NFL team here in 1970. And I was this new kid in town, and I tried to help them market it and sell tickets to the game for the exhibition games that they would have during the summertime, the end of the summer times. And so I got to meet several people in the African-American community. I was, of course, involved with a bunch of young white guys and gals, and, we were involved with all kinds of things that young people in their early 20s get involved with. But then you get thrown into a group of an opportunity to meet new people, different people from all over the city that just wanted to go and sit and watch a ball game. Well, that's how I met a guy by the name of Harold Shaw, an African-American that was one of the executives at Universal Life Insurance Company. It was just the third largest Black insurance company in America. It was downtown. And his wife was Pat Walker Shaw. And I got to meet Harold and George Brown, who's an attorney and on the school board. And then he ended up being appointed the first African-American Supreme Court justice in the state by Lamar Alexander. This was in it was probably the early 80s when that happened. So got to meet those guys. Lawrence Blackman was one of those, Bobby Welch, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'd see him around town, but, we didn't get a wonderful friendship, but it was friendly. And we enjoyed talking with each other, but we weren't involved socially. Let me say that. So when this whole Memphis in May thing came about, it was in 1974. I was part of an organization called the Memphis Cotton Carnival. It's an all-white organization. I got involved because I was new in town and I didn't know anybody, and it was a way they gave these great parties, and then they asked me to be on their board and be the events committee chairman, and I got to see that part of it. And what I tried to get them to do is maybe change. Let's try to open it up to more people as far as the community was concerned. Well, about that time, it was about 1974, there was a new organization that the Chamber of Commerce was putting together, and it was called the Memphis in May International Festival Society. And it was built off of the Edinburgh Festival in Scotland. It's a month-long festival, fabulous things that they do. So I finally went with the family about 20 years ago, and it's just a magnificent thing to be made after. We never reached those heights, but we sure have gone a long way from where we were. So this guy came back and said, why don't we try to do this? And at the time, there was the St. Jude Shower of Stars. The Metropolitan Opera came through town during that period of time. And there was the golf tournament and Cotton Carnival and the Cotton Makers Jubilee. And there were a few things going on. The idea was to try to add as many events to May as they possibly could. Well, now think about that. That was 1974. King had been assassinated in 68. And it was It was a deserted downtown. It was a poor downtown. It was a chamber of commerce that was all but bankrupt. And I was on that board at that period of time. Well, anyway, the chamber went to organizations like Cotton Carnival and the opera and the symphony and said, suggest some board members for us for this new society. And they asked me if I would be one of the representatives for Carnival. And I said, yes. So that started in 1974. It started and it opened up what was then the Cook Convention Center. And it is now the new Renaissance Center.
Yes.
But it was our big convention center, and we're opening up just as the King assassination happened a few years before, and we're just going in to one of the worst recessions in the country's history in the early 70s. Terrible timing, terrible everything. So the society asked me they elected me to be treasurer, which would allow me to step up to be president of Memphis in May 1977. So, but after they opened the Cook Convention Center, there was no money at the Chamber of Commerce, and there was no money downtown. I mean, we were in a terrible situation. Everybody in the country was in a recession. We were in a depression. So basically nothing happened with Memphis in May for 2 years. And so in 76, I started thinking about, well, my name's on the door to be president of this thing next year. I better be thinking about it. Well, there was a guy at the chambers that said, Lyman, you could kill Memphis in May and nobody's done anything for 2 years. Nobody would care.
Wow.
And I said, well, my name's on the door. Let me think if I can figure out something that might work. And so what I was very interested in, since the chamber was going broke, they weren't doing any economic development. Zero. And so nobody in town was doing any economic development. And so I said, anything that I do is going to be economics. Now, and I'll pull together an economic engine. How am I going to do that? Well, first of all, I wanted to change the name from Memphis May International Festival Society. I wanted to get rid of the word society. I love the word international. I wanted to work on that. And I started thinking about, well, how do we use that name? What if we go to another country, honor another country? A country might have the opportunity to come to the United States, and if they like what we did for them, maybe if they were going to invest here, maybe they would consider their friends. So that was the whole idea there. Is that a good idea? Well, a friend of mine at the Cotton Council said, would you like to go to the State Department in DC and talk to the various people at the State Department and the Commerce Department and the Agriculture Department to see whether or not they think it's a good idea? So I said, absolutely. So I went up and met with them. And I remember the guy at the Japan desk at the State Department. And he heard the idea. And I said, what do you think of it? He said, that's a good idea. He said, they're going to have to start investing here because the balance of trade is so large that it's just going to happen. So the timing is right. So when I looked at him and I said, well, do you have any money? And they said, no, we don't have any money. You have to go find that yourself. I said, great. We're a bankrupt city, chamber and everything else. There's no money available. So I come back to Memphis and start thinking about, how do we build around that? How do we start funding that? But I left something out. Before I went to DC, I had met with the international people at Memphis State and at Southwestern at Memphis, which is now Rhodes, and talked to them about the idea of honoring a country. And then how do we honor the country, and do we do more than one country a year? Do we get greedy, or do we put all the efforts into one? Well, we put all the efforts into one, and that's what we did. So I said, okay, international, fine. That's going to take a while to get a country in here and then ask them to invest. And then it might take 2 or 3, 4 years. So I said, well, the short-term strategy is let's build Memphis character events. What would bring people downtown? initially bring them downtown because everybody was afraid to come downtown because of the riots and people getting killed in the street and so forth. So nothing had happened down here in all those years. And so I said, it's time, and we ought to build it around music and whatever else we consider is Memphis. Mm-hmm. That we bring people from East Memphis and then the region and then the country and then internationally by the fifth year. When you're young, and we were all 25 to 33 years old with no money, but just brains and lots of excitement, and just like you are at your age, a lot of vigor, a lot of excitement, vision. That's what built the country, and that's what built Memphis in May. And so I went about going out and finding these young people to be a part of this organization. And I went to Harold Shaw. I called Harold, who is this African-American guy that I told you about that I met at the football game in 1971. Mm-hmm. See, I was not going to do a Memphis in May without it being a diverse organization. I was not going to do it because I'd been a part of one that didn't work well. And I said, for the whole city, everybody needs to be involved. Mm-hmm. It'll make people feel like they are a part of their city. And so I call Harold and I say, Harold, meet me at the little tea shop downtown. Yes. So we have lunch downtown, and I pitch him on my idea. And he looks at me across the table and says, Lyman, y'all gonna listen? What he meant was, you white boys gonna listen? Mm-hmm. I'm saying, Harold, we're gonna listen. I'm telling my friends, we're not talking race, we're not talking politics, we're talking economic development, where we can all work together to try to create jobs for our families and for the future. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's what we're doing. That's the only thing that we're doing. And I've told my white friends the same thing, that we're going to be sitting around the table together, trying to create something that'll help save the city. Mm. And so he said, okay. And I said, Harold, you can bring anybody you want. He said, okay, I'm going to bring George Brown. I said, well, who's George Brown? Well, he's a lawyer and he's on the school board. I said, great. Who else are you bringing? No, I'm just bringing George. I said, Harold, there's no quotas here. You can bring as many people as you want to sit around the table, the initial meeting. No, I'm just bringing George. I understand what he was doing. So I didn't understand then, but I understood all these years later. He was testing me whether or not we were going to be, whether he thought that we were being real or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we go to they all come to the first meeting. It wasn't more than maybe 12 people, 10 or 12 people there. And they liked what they heard. And so after the meeting, we're kind of milling around down at the dais, and they come down and said, we really like what we hear. We want to bring Dr. Moshe Von Hooks. And I said, great. Who's Dr. Moshe Von Hooks? Well, she's an educator, and did you know her?
No.
Oh my gosh. You missed an incredible woman. An international woman, studied at the Sorbonne. She got her PhD in international and education at UT, master's at Columbia. And I said, please bring her. So they come to the next meeting. And Dr. Hook says, do you know what you all have here? We said, well, we're working on it. And she said, no, what an opportunity to educate all the children in the schools about a different country every year.
Yes.
And we said, oh my gosh, since we were not educators, none of us even glimmer of hope on that. And it just like, oh my gosh. I said, Dr. Hooks, you're the chairman. We'll help you raise the money, and you can get anybody on your committee that you want on that committee. Mm-hmm. And she said, okay. And so she went out of that door as chairman, and George Brown, being on the school board, helped push that thing through the school board. So every year, and they're still doing it 44 years later. So they put on a program for most of the school children for the month of May on the honored country. All aspects of the culture and the business, the music, et cetera, of the foreign country. So these kids, they learn about 10 or 12, depending on if they're middle school or high school. They learn about so many countries by the time they get out of school. Mm-hmm. Just a marvelous thing. Yeah. And then, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, they started doing exchange programs. The kids would have to write essays. And so then they would select, I think there's 12 or 14 kids every year that go to the honored country. And then the honored country has 12 or 14 that comes to Memphis and studies here. What an opportunity. Just what an opportunity.
Yeah.
But what I've always been disappointed in is we didn't have 100 kids going. Mm-hmm. We needed 100 or as many as we could possibly get. When it gets down to sponsors. Anyway, that's me saying, oh, I wish we had, 10 times more than we got right now. But so glad these kids have had the opportunity to do that. So Dr. Hooks had that idea. Excuse me. And in my estimation now, in these 40 plus years, Suna, mm-hmm. I think almost 2 million kids have been touched by that education.
Wow.
Now think about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
amazing.
It's amazing. And I wish we had more public relations on it and what that does and what it has done. The organization has won all kind of awards for the education program, but I wish more people in the city would know about it. And I wish more sponsors would step up and say, I'd sponsor 10 kids. I'd sponsor 10 kids. To go to the country. Right. It just builds the international aspect of us. And what's the best educator? Suna, what's the best educator?
Definitely. Look, interactions, experience.
Travel.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so that has been a phenomenon. It's just been a phenomenon.
Let's take a quick break. You're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. Welcome back. This is Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I'm Sana, and I'm here with Mr. Lyman Aldrich, and we've been talking about the history, the origins, those early years of the Memphis in May International Festival.
So now I'm going to back up. Who else is on that board? They're male, female, black and white, and, excuse me, And they're all, as I said, they're all young, 25 to 32 years old, no money. We had no titles. We were not bank chairmen. We were not mayors. We decided we're going to do this on our own, use our own brains. We refused to accept money from the city, the state, and the county.
Wow.
It's all privately funded, even today. Mm-hmm. Now, that's amazing. We just went out and knocked on doors and say, these are good ideas. We have to save the city.
Yes.
And so we'll be part of it, and what it ended up being is that we brought thousands of people downtown year in and year out, but I'll get to that in a minute. When I came back from DC, the guy at the chamber said, that there is a Japanese company here in Memphis? And I said, nope. They said, well, it's Datsun Forklift. And they were part of Nissan, but it was the old Datsun name. It was out by Elvis's house. Would you want to see him? And I said, of course. Excuse me. So we go out, make an appointment, and go see these two wonderful gentlemen, Iwata and Takauchi-sans. And I told them what we were doing, and that we were honoring their country. And I said, I don't want to make any mistakes. You're the first country that we've honored. Will you be on our board of directors so we're not making any mistakes? Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Never missed a meeting. They, 2 months before the festival, beginning of April, they said, would you come see me in our offices? And I said, of course. So I go back out and they say, well, we've invited the ambassador to the United States for Japan to come to the Memphis in May. You're honoring us and we're bringing our ambassador. Well, that
Wow.
scared the bejesus out of me. Because
Wow.
I'm not sure that this state had ever had a visit from an ambassador. Nobody can tell me whether or not we had. There has to be one. So, but anyway, it was so unusual that the Secret Service had to be here. The governor had to be here to welcome him here. We didn't have any speaking at the Rotary at the time. They had 400 people, but it really did. I just was almost speechless. Oh my gosh, with downtown, think about how bad downtown was.
Right.
And you're going to have this wonderful guy who you're trying to get a lot of money out of to invest in your town. And the downtown is collapsed. Excuse me. So anyway, at the end, of course, they stayed on the board during that whole year. And at the end of the festival, I go back out at their invitation and they say that the ambassador says to tell you that he's going to bring business to Memphis and to Tennessee. Oh my gosh, Sarah, that was the whole idea, right?
Yes.
I mean, if they follow through, we're going to get jobs out of this.
Yes.
Well, then that is 1977. In 1978, a guy in Memphis by the name of Bill Morris gets elected county mayor. Very vivacious, bright, great salesman. And Bill gets elected county mayor. He's got this great idea that he wants to really do a lot for the city and the county. And then the next year, Lamar Alexander gets elected governor. So they immediately, in 79, they make their first trip to Japan, knocking on doors saying, we really want to do business with you. Come do business with us. And so the next year, Sharp Electronics announced they were coming to Memphis and bringing 1,200 jobs.
Wow.
I mean, that still gives me chills every time I say that, because you just hope and you pray, that something like that will happen. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Now, Lamar took the automobile plant to Middle Tennessee because, excuse me, the soil was not good enough here in West Tennessee to take those big machines that they had at the automobile plant. So we missed that, and it went to Central Tennessee, and we got brother was a printer at that time. Now they're doing other things, but Sharp Electronics. I think we've got 15 in West Tennessee, Japanese companies.
Wow.
Excuse me.
I mean, that's just amazing though, to think, you all had this vision as very, excited young people, no money, but just a vision and a desire to create something special in Memphis, to have a longer term vision. And I love that it was economic development at the front and center, which I didn't know. I'm not sure how many of our listeners knew that, because of course now we think about Memphis in May and kind of what it is currently. But for you to share kind of this part of the story so far is really exciting, because you all had a vision and it really turned into exactly what you were hoping for, which was bringing, more jobs to the city. So that is so exciting.
God answers prayers.
Yes.
And, we're a bunch of young people that just had energy and hope, and that they could do something for their city. And this is the Memphis model that we want for the future, for young people to know that they can do it too, whether it's in their city or another city in this country, or in another city or community in another country, that Black, white, men and women, and Japanese, and every year we bring in another culture to work with us to try to do great things for our city. And so we didn't stop at just Black, white Memphians, men and women. We said, let's add another country. Young people can do anything, right, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I mean, think about it. You can. You let your brain go. and get excited about it, and you can do anything.
Absolutely.
And we prove that.
Yes, yes. So tell me more about this first festival. So what was included under, Memphis in May International Festival 1977, honoring Japan? What were the events then?
Think about how poor Memphis was then. Everybody, the government, everybody was poor. And so what do young people do? They figure out a way to get it done, is what they did. And what we did, we had this events committee that Rodney Baber, a young guy that was a friend, a lot of energy and a lot of creativity. And what we did, we were really smart. We said, where are we going to have these meetings? Well, let's go to the bar. Let's go to a bar. And Overton Square was getting started then, and it was more fun. And we'd go to the Bombay Bicycle Club, and we'd go to the Public Eye, we'd alternate. And on Thursdays, we'd go have a couple of drinks, and then we'd go back to their meeting room. And then everybody was loose, and they'd start throwing out ideas. That year, we created the Beale Street Music Festival, the Sunset Symphony, the Memphis Jazz Festival at Court Square. And then that same group the next year came up with the idea of the barbecue contest. That group came up with the events and the education program that you see today. That was all us in 77 and 78, 9 and 80. And so we put, everybody took I'll be chair of this. I said, I had all these chairmen, and they brought people working with them. And then we opened it up to anybody that wanted to come and work and help. Anybody. There was here again, there was no quotas and nothing. Everybody got along. We were there to get along and do something together, not talk race or politics, to create economic development. We were all on the same page, on the same wavelength. And you created these things, and it was just fun.
Yeah.
I mean, the first year, the estimate is we brought 15,000 people downtown.
Wow.
Beale Street Music Festival was a 2-day festival, and it had all the jazz guys and gals from when they had to leave downtown when Beale Street closed. They were out all over the country, all over the world. And they came back. Irvin Salke, who was a lawyer here in town, put up the money to bring those guys and gals back. Phenomenal that they came. It was the first step to reopening Beale Street.
Wow. And
it was a 2-day festival. We charged $2. $2. And then we had the Sunset Symphony, and we charged nothing. The same way with the Jazz Festival. So we brought 15,000 people the first year. The second year, we brought 40,000 people downtown.
Wow.
And the third year, we brought 100,000 people downtown.
Oh my goodness.
See how fast that grew?
Yes.
We started with one volunteer, me. And I think it was 6 years later, we had 2,500 volunteers.
Wow.
Young. Everybody was coming out of the woodwork to help. Everybody just was blown away by the excitement, the fun, the quality of the events. We got sponsors to sponsor. It ended up being Budweiser and Coke and Canale Family and all kind of organizations here that said, we want to be a part of this. It was an amazing time.
Wow. I bet. I mean, it sounds so exciting. And really, I feel invigorated just listening to you, retell this story, because it's so true, especially young folks, you have an idea, you're excited about it, and anything is possible. And you just, come together and you make it happen. And, thinking about Memphis in May, and what it is today, it's so amazing that it really came from, your idea, a group of young people just really, with that belief that of course it's going to happen. Of course we can do this.
Of course you can do it. And that's what we want this next generation to do. And as I mentioned, it can happen anywhere, but you gotta you got to get them together, and you got to charge them with, it was done in Memphis after the King assassination, which has to be the worst of times for any city. And 8 years later, you're saying, well, what can we do to climb out of the doldrums? And then you get a bunch of creatives sitting around and they're saying, oh, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this. We just had to hold people and ideas back. You could only do so much. But it was just a phenomenon. Here again, God's hand does move. I mean, I don't know how all that happened. We didn't have money. We had bad race relationships. King was assassinated. We didn't know any international people. And then all of this just happened. It just happened.
Yeah. Oh, we are also glad that it did happen. And, as you kind of alluded to, what you all were able to do in the 1970s is what young people today can do. And, this story is the proof. And I know you've been doing some work on, or there is some work being done around kind of creating a documentary about everything you all did. So could you share a little bit more about the documentary that's being made and some of the other projects you're involved with in bringing this story kind of to more people?
It's a labor of love for a number of the past presidents and co-founders way back to say the story can't be lost. The story needs to be out there and to be a help of people in so many towns that do need to do some things for their community. It also is the story, the answer to a lot of the questions today, Suna. The question of the day is, how do people get along these days? How do I sit down with somebody that doesn't look like me, and how do we communicate? How do we do that? And so we did that, and it is nothing magic about it, except I called Harold and said, Harold, this is something we have to do together. You do it together. And that's the story that needs to be told, because we created great success for the city. Yes. All the things that we did, and all the businesses that were created. I'll give you just one example. Japan, after Lamar and Bill went over and came back with those first two companies, there are 200 Japanese companies in the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
They hire 55,000 Tennesseans to work for them. Doesn't that blow your mind?
Yes.
From that ambassador coming to Memphis in 1977. I mean, it just blows my mind that those kind of things can happen. If you got the right people involved and lots of excitement and thinking about it, it can happen. It might not be economic development in every community. It might be something else that they need of the community. And these young people get together and say, we can solve that problem. We can solve that problem. But we get together and do it. We have fun doing it.
We'll be right back. You're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. You're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on 91.7 FM. I'm Sana, and I'm here with Mr. Lyman Aldrich. We've been talking about the early years of the Memphis in May International Festival, how it all came together. And Mr. Aldrich is sharing with us that a documentary is going to be created about this history. The documentary is Rebirth on the River. Yeah.
So what we'll do with the documentary is to tell the story. And so the story will be exciting for people to say, I need that in my country. I need that in my state. We've been asked by 3 different countries for this story because It's a story of how do we get people to work together? How do we get people to work together? And so that's what we want people to learn. We don't want the story to be lost. We want it to be something that excites people to say, wow, it can be done. And so we put the documentary out there. We want to be here in Memphis, of course. We'll premiere here. And then the idea that I had right at the beginning of the show, I told you I wanted to tell you about where we're going to do with that documentary. I want to premiere it internationally in 2 countries, Japan and South Korea. Because Japan was the first country. We need to go over there and say, Memphis, we were the first to honor you. We want you to come back. We've honored Japan twice, by the way, the first and the 10th year. Want you to come back. Let's set up a sister city relationship. Let's set up a business exchange. Let's do trade missions back and forth every other year, each country, so we can have more Japanese companies here. So we make that presentation in Japan. And by the way, our new senator from Tennessee is the former ambassador to Japan, Bill Haggerty, who has the relationships, who can set these things up. Then, because of what I told you at the beginning of your program, is Innovation SK, South Korea. Yes. So you leave Tokyo and we go to Seoul, South Korea, and we say, we want to welcome you to Memphis with your major investment. We want to help you any way we can. What can we do together to help you and help you bring other South Korean companies to West Tennessee? So you're building a group of South Koreans that are in West Tennessee, but they can share their cultures, the culture with each other. That's what Japan does. They go and might be one that came in back in 78, 79 and 80, but now they're 200, and the families work, they have their culture, they have schools, language schools, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the kinds of things that can grow. You can have sister city relationships. It's just, and another thing you do is you ask them for a major cultural event, the art exhibit that they could bring to your city. That's what's in the back of our mind at Revival Memphis, with what we'll do with the documentary that's called Rebirth on the River. That's what we want to do, not just to have a documentary that you see at one time at WKNO and it's on the shelf forever. We plan to promote it to every PBS station in the country. I don't know how many we'll get to, but we're planning to do that. We'll have an asset that tells this great story of people coming together and working very successfully in the worst of times, in the worst of times.
Yes. So important and so relevant to today, as you know, these questions of how can we work together continue to come to the forefront. And as you mentioned, this group of excited, visionary young folks in the 1970s can tell us a lot about how in 2022, we can still come together and work towards a common goal and have fun while we do it. And I think that's so key to why you all were successful, where it was like, hey, we're going to just throw out any idea we have. We're going to be supportive of it. We're going to figure out how to do it. We're going to have some fun while we do it. And I think that makes the difference when folks are able to say, here's a common goal that's going to benefit all of us, right? Economic development in Memphis, particularly at that time, that's going to benefit everyone, and everyone's voice and input is important as we craft out this vision for what our city, could look like.
You are so right on. I'm glad you got what you just told me from what I've told you so far. But there's one more aspect of this, is that we're putting together a lesson plan, and I call it the Memphis model. It's the lessons of how do you work together? What did we have to deal with?
Oh yeah.
How did we solve the problems? All having to do with getting along with one another. And so that's something that we're going to be promoting we want it to be age appropriate from children in as young as 3 years old, through college, through leadership groups.
Yeah.
And through corporations or anybody that's working with a diverse workforce or student body or whatever. They all deal with the same problems that we dealt with back in 1976, 7, 8, 9, And so we just figured out how we could work together and have fun doing it. and remain friends for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the Memphis model. Those are the lessons that we're going to be promoting all over the country and to countries all over the world. Because you back to, again, I've heard it 3 times this week, that diversity is not a thing anymore. Nobody wants to be diverse anymore. And I'm saying, oh my gosh, that is a key to how we all get along together. You got to figure out how you can do that. Well, if we can do just a little bit from the lessons that we have in the documentary in the years to come to help other communities, organizations see that it can work, then we've really made great progress as far as to humanity, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's so necessary, as you mentioned, for young children. And I love that age starting out at 3 is so important, all the way up to, folks who are in the workforce, because we all are, interacting across races, ethnicities, culture, sexual orientation, and a variety of different ways that we are distinct and diverse from one another. And so it is important to understand how we can use, the Memphis model to work together and to create positive social change. So I love this is going to be made into a curriculum to go along with the documentary as well. So necessary.
May I comment on that?
Yes.
The University of Memphis is helping us. We're collaborating with how to develop the curriculum or the curricula, because there's got to be age appropriate. It's got to be all kind of things. And so we're just beginning to figure out how we can do that together, because this is new to all of us. But we know we don't have that ability on developing curriculum, but somebody like the university would, and they can be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another thing that just popped up just recently as I was talking to Kurt, until I was talking to some people in your foundation and in economic development at the Chamber of Commerce. But back to the university, in speaking with your CFO, Raj Kurapate, Raj says, I want to recruit in all of those countries that you're talking about. Japan, South Korea, India, and all of the countries that have the ability to send really smart, good students to the University of Memphis. And we use the documentary as a door opener to say, Memphis accepts. We've been accepting people since 1977. And so we're delighted to have you. And so that's going to be used to do that. And also it's going to be used as far as economic development is concerned with the chamber, to open the doors to say, we've honored you in the past. We want to continue honoring you. Come back and see us. Let's have business exchanges every year.
Oh, I love that. I mean, so much. I mean, again, just to think of how Memphis MA started with really the determination to create something, right? Because as you mentioned, in those early years, you were told, hey, if you don't do anything, as president of Memphis MA, it'll be okay because of the economic conditions of that time. But to see what has grown from that over the decades, it truly is inspirational.
Well, I'm glad you see that as a person your age. It certainly was for us to do that. It was very inspirational. So many things came out of it. The documentary will take probably an hour and a half maybe to do, and we're still going to leave a whole lot out. But there's so many things that people can get inspired by. We were, as one of our past presidents says, we were a place where creativity took place. The education program. Do you know we do a poster for the honored country each year, the fine arts poster?
Yes.
A young woman came to me back in 1978 and said, I'm young, I'm poor, I'm a marketing director at one of these local banks, but I can't afford good art, but I want good art. she said, what about this thing about let's get an artist from Memphis each year to depict what they think the foreign country is art-wise. And then we'll make posters and sell them, and so you can make money. Oh, I said, oh, Carla Meisterman. I said, Carla, God, what a excuse me, what a great idea. I said, you're chairman. We're going to help you raise the money, and you can get anybody to work on it as you want. We now have 40 incredible paintings from local artists. That's just for the country itself. Beale Street Music Festival has George Hunt's originals, and there must be 30 of them. And just an incredible idea. And here again, she said, what Memphis MA was a place for young people to come and create. It's another lesson to learn. Yeah. And we didn't have money, so you don't have to go have your hand out to a government to fund it. You can do it on your own if your idea is good enough. That's another lesson for all ages. You don't have to have your hand out all the time.
And just the importance of having a place for young people to create, whether through ideas or through art itself, is so important as well.
Yeah, and her whole committee had an incredibly good time getting that thing started. And I go to all the unveilings. I've been to all the unveilings. I think maybe every one of them. But just to see the painting and to meet the artist and to tell them how it started, that this young woman, when she was 25 or 6 or something like that, comes up and says, here's an idea that will put art in it. Suna, those posters are all over the world.
Yes.
The Memphis name is all over the world because of those posters. All over Embassy Row, in DC, and in every capital, all 39 of them, I think.
Wow.
Pretty amazing reach that this group of young people had, isn't it?
Yes, it is absolutely. I mean, it's truly unbelievable. So important to the city. And I am so happy to hear that this documentary is being made, that this history is being recorded so that we can, enjoy it and we can have even more pride in our city. Do you have an idea of when you'll start doing screenings of the documentary, or when the documentary will be completed?
We are working on the preliminary part of it right now. Our trailer, sizzler, some people call it, should be finished in a week.
Oh, wow.
And okay. with that, we're going to use it to go to interested people for the funding of the documentary and the lesson plans. And so depending on when we, excuse me, that was my board of director. Excuse me. Please, your radio listeners, there's another dog outside. So, so I'm hoping, quite frankly, that we have the documentary done either last quarter of this year or first quarter of next year.
Okay.
So the end of 22 or the beginning of 23, because it's funding and then completing the script and getting the music score in place. And we want it to be a great music score, since Memphis is a great music town.
Oh, yeah.
And we're to get the right people to do the score and put all the music in it that reflects Memphis from the time the cotton was picked until what you see today. And so that's going to make it a fun, exciting kind of an aspect of what was a serious kind of an endeavor.
Yeah. Well, we will definitely be on the lookout for the completed projects sometime at the end of this year or early next year. Mr. Aldrich, it has been such a pleasure to have you here with us this morning. Thank you so much for sharing the story of Memphis in May and your experience, and also for telling us, what's next. Thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course.
The name of our organization is Revival Memphis, and it's a 501c3 that's going to be producing the movie that's called Rebirth on the River. So it's Revival Memphis and Rebirth on the River. And the website is revival-memphis.org. let'sgrab-memphis.org.
Awesome. So for listeners, you want to find out more and be on the lookout for that sizzler of the documentary. I'm sure you can find more on the website. So thank you again, Mr. Lyman Aldrich.
Thank you so much, Sana. Enjoyed it very much.
Wow, so much history that Mr. Lyman Aldrich shared with us this morning. It was truly an honor to have him talk about, those early years of the Memphis in May International Festival. I don't know about you, but even though I am a Memphian, raised here, University of Memphis alum, I had never heard this history before. I guess I just took for granted that Memphis in May just exists, and of course enjoy the barbecue and the music and everything else that is involved in this month-long celebration. But it was so good to hear the history, because that's a reminder of what young people can do, what a group of people who are excited and who have a vision, who come together to work together can accomplish. I mean, it really is inspiring. And I think it is a story worth telling and worth repeating, not just to other folks, but also to ourselves. Because Memphis is often, sometimes we can be hard on ourselves and we get bad press, but this is something for us to be really proud about. I mean, think about the countless jobs that have been created through Memphis in May, the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been brought to the city. And then of course, Memphis being on, an international stage as well. A lot to be proud of. So I wanted to leave you with a positive note that, I couldn't help but think about as I was listening to Mr. Aldrich share this history. And that's the quote that says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And that's me, that's you, that can be us, getting excited, having a vision, working together, and who knows what that might lead to. Just like that group of young folks back in the 1970s, look at what it has led to. I cannot wait until the documentary comes out, Rebirth on the River. Again, so this story can be told to us as Memphians, but also around the world. Well, this has been Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7. If you missed some of this great interview, be sure to listen to the replay. It'll be archived on the show site on WYXR.org. And also subscribe to Let's Grab Coffee. It's available in podcast format wherever you stream podcasts, so you never have to miss an episode, and you can re-listen as well. Well, I'm Sana, and I hope you have a great week. I will see you back here next Monday.